Of course, this is no different than what it ever has been, but you're not pushing hard enough to be more perfect. You're still making mistakes. And in other words, this is happening in all the crafts. Not just here, but in the crafts. And we're not here to tell you of the shortcomings. We're here to tell you what you can be working on. In other words, you've got to consciously make your mind make that vehicle do what it's supposed to do. That makes sense. The further along we get, if you do not get your vehicle under control, the more out of control your vehicle can become, the more mistakes you can make. You see what we're saying? Can you hear me okay? In other words, it doesn't become easier. It becomes more difficult. And when you all do things that you think, without thinking everything through, you're more capable of making mistakes. I feel like I'm getting all things up. But you cannot continue doing things without thinking about it. In other words, every aspect of the task that you have. And you can't get away with doing it out of habit. In the next level, you do nothing out of habit. You do it because you are consciously doing it. And doing it according to procedure, not by the way that you think it flows. Do you know what I'm talking about? Using the example of the picnic. You took the easier way to go and try and get what was scheduled to be used at that time.
The other extreme would have been to go all over town looking for it. But to certainly not look an additional place, since it was time to switch from lemon or orange to chocolate, then it was just taking the easy way, the quick way. Part of what he's saying, the more, just in other words, or to put it a different way, the more we change, the more difficult it is, because you're getting more and more foreign to the help of your, in other words, your vehicle can't help you. You're getting more and more separated from any programming that you might have had genetically that could assist you in your control. And therefore, the more you change, the more effort is required to keep your vehicle under control, because you're becoming more and more foreign to the vehicle. And so the vehicle can falter and seem like it's going haywire, and sometimes you'll think that you're just acting like a dummy, that you just can't. Why are you so foolish? Or why can't you do anything right? Or why are you as clumsy as an infant? And it's because the more you change, the less bond you have with the vehicle, and the more discipline that you have to require of it, as if it's it's more separate from you. It takes more effort to control it. It's like a dog that's getting on a more distant leash, in a sense, but you're expecting better conduct of the dog, even though his leash is a little longer. But his natural response is to cooperate less because you've given him a little rein.
As the mind grows, it becomes less foreign to this vehicle. When the mind was younger, it could cope with the vehicle maybe a little bit better than it can right now, even though you still have to keep it under control. But in a sense, you're outgrowing your vehicle, which is the right thing to do. It's like our vehicles. We're having more and more difficulty talking than right now. I'm having a very difficult time trying to zero in on something that makes sense. In my mind, it makes sense, but I wonder if it makes any sense to you all. You see what I'm saying? So it is good that you're outgrowing your mind. I mean your vehicle. Your mind is outgrowing your vehicle. But that still doesn't mean that you can let the vehicle get away with anything. Your mind is stronger. You can make your vehicle do what it's supposed to do according to procedure. But you have to use more force in order to do it. If you just let yourself go without exerting any effort to make your vehicle do what has been taught according to procedure, then you will be very weak. You won't have any strength. You will be a nothing. You will have wasted this time that you are here. And remember, the purpose of your being here is to gain strength. If you get into something because it's easy and it's the way of the vehicle or what's in the genes of the vehicle, then you aren't accomplishing a thing. You're just going through a mockery, so to speak. Now, we're not talking to just you all. We're recording this so that it includes everybody in Christ. It includes T and O. We have to consciously work to keep these vehicles under control.
We have to work very hard.
Very hard.
To even make them function. It's almost like the vehicle is more like an artificial limb. The more the mind grows, the vehicle becomes like an artificial limb that has a very poor connection with the mind. And the effort that it takes from that mind to make that artificial limb, your vehicle, perform and do what you require of it is a very, very difficult task. Now, we can see why it's designed so that it gets more difficult as you change. Since the whole reason for your being here is to gain strength anyhow. And so it makes sense that the more you change, the more difficult it would be, so that you would have to exert more and more and more effort. You always have the choice of making that artificial limb more like your own limb by reverting to human ways. It almost brings that artificial limb to life, almost makes it a part of your vehicle. But your vehicle should be like this artificial limb. It should have no mind of its own. And therefore it's a mechanism that has to be absolutely consciously made to do everything that it does. And it takes an awful lot of effort to make it cooperate. And this isn't, your teachers aren't just experiencing this because of the age of their vehicles. We can see, believe it or not, we see the same thing happening in your relationship with your own vehicles. We see it happening all the time. And yet we see you in a position where you don't know what to do. And sometimes you take the shortcut, and sometimes you don't exert the effort to really figure out how can I make this mechanism work. Because I don't want to be satisfied with poor performance of this mechanism. I want to be satisfied with making this mechanism perform as a glove on a hand, and the hand being a hand of the next level. And therefore, if it's going to perform in next level ways, then its performance standard has to be very high. And we want your performance standard to be very high. We want you to be more and more devoted to increasing your performance level. You're perfecting your adherence to instructions and understanding them in depth and knowing how to apply them without getting distorted or confused. And like what T said a moment ago, always thinking things out so clearly before you act. It doesn't mean it has to be a lengthy thinking out process. It can be a quick one if it has a lot of effort behind it. But you can't let things just you can't just let the performance happen and just stub your toe and be satisfied with poor performance.
Our minds have receded considerably since we last visited. You all have allowed your vehicles to become more dominant. In other words, it's very obvious to me that your next level minds aren't very close to the surface. They're coming in right now, but I'm bringing them in because of my saying this. In other words, you're exerting the effort to bring your mind to the surface. But I think you all know that your minds have not been to the surface because of what you've been feeling. You can have been feelings of very human thoughts, and I think you all know that. And you wondered what's happening to you, right? Am I right? And I'm not being psychic, it's just on you. It's written across your face. If you had everything written across your face that you had been dealing with, written in red ink, it couldn't be clearer. And what you need to do is fight it off and kick those boogers out and kick those thoughts out and get back to where you were. Now, were prior to our withdrawing from you a little bit. But you've got to learn something from this experience. You've got to learn that you have the ability to withdraw from your vehicle, so much so that your vehicle can begin to act and have thoughts that is very beneath you. And you don't want to allow it to happen again, because you've got to learn how to maintain your next level mind or your thinking according to a member of the next level. Understand? You don't want to let the characteristics of those vehicles come out and take control. Your mind wants to be in control of the vehicle. You know what I'm saying? So this is, we have pulled away from you because we have been instructed to do that. We have come up here to talk to you tonight because we have been instructed to do it. And to remind you that, or to let you know that you have regressed some as far as your mind's not being in complete control. And It's part of the process of growing. It doesn't have to be that way. In other words, it can very easily change. As of this moment, it can change. From the moment you hear this tape, it can change to where your mind is in control of your vehicle. But when your minds are not with you strongly and your vehicle's in control, your teachers have an awful difficult time talking to you or communicating with you. And whenever you know that, or whenever we are trying to discuss something with you and we have difficulty with it, should you wonder what's happening to T and O, or should you wonder what's happening to you because they're not able to talk to you? This is what you want to question always, because you know that each day that we are here, each day that it is passes, that means we are a day closer to leaving. And you don't want to be becoming weaker. You want to become stronger. And so therefore it's foolish to waste this time that you have. When once you get out of here, you're not going to get any more than what you have gained during this time. So why waste it? Take advantage of this time and become strong.
Yes, I don't know if I can get this out in a way that will be clear, but the thought keeps coming to my mind that probably some of you wonder at times why, or maybe you don't wonder, but why there's been such a long period of time since we sat down and talked to you about lessons or about something that might be considered a sermon or something that is so-called higher information. Let's say each time we would sit down and give you some new information or some expanded understanding, that you were inspired by it and it helped you maintain your conduct level and keep your vibration in a better place. But what is it that's going to motivate you when there are periods of time when you should not need inspiration or higher information or sermonettes from your teachers or well, I don't know what else to call it. So I don't know if you know what the motivation should be, but I'll tell you what the motivation should be. If you have seen the value of the ways of the next level, and I'm going to repeat that, if you have really seen the value of the ways of the next level, if you can see what we have tried to share with you as ways of the next level, and if you can see the true value of those ways, then you should love those ways more than life itself. Nothing should mean to you anything but those ways, if you have seen the value of those ways. Now, loving those ways should be all the motivation that you would ever need to keep your vibration where it belongs and to keep your conduct and your pursuit of excellence and performance where it belongs. So I would really question whether or not you have really awakened to appreciate the values of the next level. And if you can see them for being what they are, And if you have recognized how wonderful they are, and if you have recognized that, then why don't you carry with you that love for the ways of the next level, which would motivate continually your desire to sharpen your tool, increase your performance, elevate your thoughts, perfect your ways with each other, and rid yourself of we have still little smatterings of pettiness, even at times in the craft, and orneriness and ugliness that comes and goes, a little sarcasm and what?
Harshness, negativism.
Harshness or negativism, or they're just little ailments that almost come back habitually. When this vehicle was young and it saw its human dad, the older he got, the more bitter he became. And when he was a younger man, he was very positive and very optimistic and happy and alive. And somehow or other, as age crept up on the vehicle, it became more, not really bitter. I don't want to give you the wrong picture, because he never was a bitter man, but he wasn't as happy as he was as a younger man. And because life began to slow down, he couldn't do as much as he could do as a younger man, and couldn't be as productive, and that was very sad. So as a younger vehicle, this vehicle thought, I cannot let that happen. That's not going to happen. Of course, I never could even imagine this vehicle getting old. I don't know why, because you see it sitting before you, getting pretty old. But in other words, the genetic structure of the generations that put this vehicle together probably had some of those characteristics that became distasteful to me. They probably began to blossom as the time capsule of those vehicles reached certain span and certain places in aging. Now, some of you all, in continuing to experience sarcasm or negativity or moodiness or giving in to lower thoughts or actions, purely don't have a handle on those genetic little explosions. Those little, it's like the genes of your vehicle lets out a little odor, or bursts out some little uncontrolled mechanism that's a habit of that vehicle, not even necessarily acquired in this lifetime, but through generations of mixed family genes. So recognizing that your vehicle is capable of performing in those ways, and having that attitude of being too quick or too harsh or too this or that, you should see that clearly now as just characteristics of the vehicles. And your control should now be sufficient to keep it intact, and so that your mind can make that limb artificial, and a good performing artificial limb, instead of a human type limb that still emits a vibration of human characteristics. If it's a true artificial limb under your control, it doesn't emit anything. And you ought to be able to keep it artificial. you ought to keep that much distance with your vehicle. And in all of its aspects, including your brain. Now, when you're doing that, of course, it's not going to perform very well as a human would perform. It takes an awful lot of effort, we know, for some of your class to stay where they're supposed to stay and to play the play-like at their out-of-craft tasks. We know that it's very, very difficult. But we know that the effort that is required of them to do that is what they need. And the task is just as difficult for those who are in craft, who are with the same other vehicles, day in and day out, tested by each other's little actions or reactions or responses or ways as the vehicle leaks out some of its little explosions once in a while. So that the task is the same, really, whether it's an out-of-craft task or it's an in-craft task, of keeping that vehicle under control. But you really should, by now, from what you've been taught, you should be able to maintain your control better without pep talks and without getting rid of lulls, or let's say a depression that builds up, or whatever it is the vehicle is trying to emit. And then if it builds up and you do something about it by spending yourself in anger or something, then you've gotten rid of it, and you can then turn and be good again. But what have you accomplished? You've accomplished nothing, because the test was not letting your vehicle get rid of it, but keeping it tapped, and keeping it tapped in a way that no one even knew it was being tapped, and even rising above knowing it yourself. And you're perfectly capable of rising above knowing it yourself. And we know you're capable of rising above it. Now, T and I know that at times, from what we have been forced to do in the past few months, we know at times that we can't even communicate with you as we're trying to do now, and we feel like we're doing a very poor job tonight communicating with you. But that's good. It's good for us to force ourselves to do it as we get instruction to do it. But when we don't do it, we also know that something very good is happening to us as we prepare more to exit. We can feel rapid changes taking place in our own development, which is at least good to watch. I mean, I don't know if you would even know how to watch it, but it's something that we have observed and feel good about. But we want you to be able to feel good about yourself by knowing that you're handling your vehicle in a way that keeps it in check, and that you have seen the payoff for living only according to the ways of the next level, and liking it so much that it's your total motivation.
We know that when we go back to the next level, that we have to grow to be accepted. In other words, we have to awaken more and do whatever we're supposed to do in order to be able to be accepted where we're going. The same as you all are doing the same thing, the same process of growing to where you're supposed to be, so that you will be accepted. And the gap between us is going to get wider. The gap between Doe and me, and you all. And it's going to be good. But the gap doesn't have to be as wide as it is right now. In other words, we've had periods of wide gaps, and you've all caught up within range. And now it's time for you to do it again. And let me ask you something. Do you all feel good about where you are right now, like Joe was talking about? Or do you feel like you could do better? Huh? Do better? In case you didn't hear that, they said do better. In a sense, that's good, but we don't want you to think what I said earlier is that we think that you're doing bad. It's part of the growth. It's part of the classroom. You do good. You get to a plateau, and it's hard to get off of that plateau. And teachers or the older members have to come along and push you off the plateau so that you can go ahead. But one day, you won't have a teacher to push you off the plateau. And this is what we're trying to get you to do on your own, and that is push yourself off of that plateau. Never be satisfied with your actions or your thoughts that you are having today or at this moment. You can always improve upon them. Your actions can always be improved upon. You never want to do something 1 hour from now that you did an hour ago. That makes sense. Because that means that you are growing at too slow of a pace. Now, when we were separated from you all just a few days ago, we were told that the gap is going to get wider between us.
No, she's not talking about between T and Doe, but between your teachers and students.
And it has to be that way. But it doesn't mean that we won't be able to communicate.
It doesn't mean you're backsliding.
No.
It just means that we're accelerating and you're accelerating. Our speeds might be a little different. And we have to prepare ourselves for what we have to prepare ourselves for. And in the process, it helps us see maybe glimpses of how you can better prepare yourselves for what you have to prepare yourself for. That's why we're sharing this with you tonight.
You can get being confined to the craft as much as some of you all are, especially when in Amarillo you used to run around a lot. And now some of you aren't able to do as much as you used to do. And you have to adjust to that. We hope you want to adjust to it. But it's part of what you have to go through at this time. In other words, they want you under the roof more. It's like using the roadie as an example. I hope he doesn't mind. But leaving his task and going in a car somewhere where his boss would send him maybe to another store or something. Well, that doesn't sound like much. Just go from here to here. What's wrong with that? But the point of it is, there's a lot wrong with it. It's what he is supposed to have coming to him while he's in that one place, that one task. And he isn't there to receive it. I don't know if I said all I was thinking. in other words, he is missing out. If you're in and out, you're losing out on some of the medicine that is coming your way.
We don't feel like the medicine is designed for the transit experience, or we would have had him look for a job, look for a task where he had that experience. Instead, we're instructed to look for tasks that have little or none of that in transit time.
You can't receive medicine in the way when you are going to auto parts stores or going to the grocery store or going here, going there, like you could receive if you are staying put in a craft as much as possible. Now it's true, you learn, you're faced with lessons, and you try to apply them or handle them in the way that you have been taught. But that is not the same. It isn't the same as receiving medicine that is directed at you, at all of you, while you're in your craft, or when you're at your out-of-craft task. T&O, if it were left up to me, I'll speak for myself, I think Doe kind of feels the same way. But we would like for everything to be as easy for you as possible. Like if you have a task and your boss wants you to run all over town, go ahead, run all over town. But it isn't left up to us. We have instructions. You have to play the rules in this way. And now it's true. I mean, we could probably scratch those instructions, and it could take forever and ever for us to accomplish what we came here for. But who wants to wait here forever and ever? And so, therefore, we try to enforce the instructions as much as we can, and we want you all to try to help us with it. We don't have to be battling all these things. We
try to live just to the letter. As close to the letter as we can possibly comprehend the instructions we're given.
And we want you all
and that's what we're trying to get you to do.
When you go on a supply run, when we say alternate cake mixes, we mean it alternate. We were looking forward to a chocolate cupcake today. This is how you want to think. You see what I'm saying? Not another lemon one, a chocolate one with white icing. You see what that's how much you want to think that it is important that you do exactly according to the way it has been designed for you, because someday, hopefully, maybe it's hopefully for you may have a task like this. You have to think to the letter. You have to keep it exact. You want to train the little computers that are assigned to you in the best way possible, because that's why you're here. And so therefore you might as well learn it now, because it's one of the purposes of your being here, to learn these things, to learn to do things to the better, because that's characteristic of members of the next level. And that's what you're trying to learn, right? I ask, do you all feel like your minds are stronger now than they were prior to our coming here a few minutes ago? Can you feel them stronger? Okay, hang on to it. Remember what it feels like. And do you agree with me when I said your mind went into your vehicle very strongly prior to our coming here?
Prior to the beginning of this meeting.
Okay. Now hang on to it. Don't let it go backward. Don't let your mind relax and go to sleep on it. Okay? That is, if you want to. It's your choice. Hope you want to.
Don't confuse next level conduct and procedures in aspiring to perfect your adhering to the letter of them Don't confuse activities such as swimming or sunning or the fact that you're wearing shorts and sandals, and don't let the things that have maybe been a change, don't let them make you feel more human. Don't let them for a moment make you feel that way. You should be able to wear any type of garment without it lowering your vibration. You should be able to play any kind of game or swim or do anything that might seemingly be nothing but a game. You might doing one game from the time you awaken in the morning until you go to rest at night. You could do one game after another all day long and still keep your actions and your vibrations and your intent and your effort to do everything according to the ways of the next level. They should remain the same. In other words, they don't apply only to serious activity and apply more weakly to so-called fun activity or lighter activity. They apply to everything. And so don't get it confused. I feel like sometimes that I still have to fight off feelings sometimes when we go to the crafts of people feeling more casual just because of the way they're dressed or because of the way maybe Lynx is dressed, wondering if Lynx isn't feeling more casual. And yet we don't want to have to go backwards and say, well, put on your shoes and your socks and your long pants and different type of clothing in order to keep your vibrations where they belong. Because certainly the garment that you put on shouldn't matter. Shouldn't be an instrument that could change keeping your mind exactly where it belongs. Nor should your activities change that in any way. So you are tested, I'm sure, by all of these little aspects just to see if you'll let your vehicle come back to life in its human characteristics, or if you will back off and keep it even more distant but under stricter control.
We're going to try and set up retreats about like we have had it in the past. In other words, we're going to have you all come here and links not to go to your class other than like we used to when you were in Amarillo. And it may be easier for you to maintain a better attitude once you come here and so on. We would like to have 4 people be able to come here at one time so that the cycle wouldn't be quite so long, but we don't know if the class will be able to handle it. It seems to have caused some kind of conflict in the South class.
I really don't know why they can't handle it. It just doesn't, for 2 people to be out of the craft, particularly if some out-of-craft people have a day off, it sounds to me like it's just poor strategy.
Well, it is. It's very poor strategy. But
if they can't handle
one of it is if there are 2 or 3 individuals who are very negative and say it can't be done, then you can bank on it not being able to happen. You see what I'm saying? And this is what was happening in the class, one class. They were feeling like we can't do it because somehow or another, I guess they threw a kink in some of those individuals. So the last 4 who were here, when were they supposed to go back?
Did you all know they were expecting them back in the morning? Because we didn't know that. Somehow or other there was a breakdown in communication, and the Crafts were short-handed simply because they were expecting the ones who were here last to be returning in the a.m. But we didn't know anything about that.
But anyway, this all could have been a test for that class. That's for certain. In other words, it should, you should away from you a little bit. Don't forget what you've been taught. Prove to the next level that you know these things. You haven't wasted all of these years to forget about them, forget everything you've been taught. It's inside of you, but it's not going to happen unless you make it happen. It's like the wagon. It's not going to go unless you pull the wagon yourself, or you figure out some way to get that wagon to go. But otherwise, the wagon will just sit there, not even moving, and before long it can become stuck in the mud if it rains. The whole story there. But the thing of it is, you don't want to let your next level mind become stagnant. And believe it or not, it can become stagnant. You've got to feed it. A baby in the mother's womb will not continue to grow if it doesn't get nourishment. If you cut off the nourishment, it will shrivel up and die. And your mind is fed nourishment by activity. And, of course, it's not going to die. I don't want you to think it'll die, but it won't grow on its own unless you exert the effort to make it grow. You've got to tell yourself this. You don't want to have inspiration to keep your mind strong. And when you begin to feel weak, know that that's your brain or your vehicle talking, not your mind, and make sure you put a stop to it. Meaning weak, I can't do anything right. That's one of the strongest things, isn't it, out here? I wanted to do everything right. I tried, but I can't. Let's see, what is some of the other things? Do you need to say? Y'all have any questions?
I wish I was trying to love that woman. I've been confused maybe for a while. If we ever make a mistake or forget something or misinterpret instruction or just college or whatever else was in the past, I can't accept the mistake and I cannot figure out why I couldn't avoid it from happening. It's like inside of us there's no excuse for it. It shouldn't happen, it never keeps happening. And I guess I think, well, mistakes happen, we can learn lessons and we can consider and grow from it. And at the same time, it shouldn't have happened. And get caught in there. I'm not sure.
Well, the regret is okay as long as you don't let it send you on a downer. But a good serious moment of regret should help drive home the intention to not let it happen again. So there's nothing wrong with regretting the mistake as long as you don't turn it into a downer. And then just turn it into determination not to do it again.
I have the idea that one good day you get beyond making mistakes, and that's what I can't. Maybe
well, it isn't beyond. I don't think you'll ever be beyond not making mistakes because you don't want to be beyond it.
Well, you won't ever be beyond having improvement, but your mistakes will be only because you have become more mature and therefore your standard is higher. But you shouldn't be making the kind of mistakes that you were making.
Right, that's what I mean.
It should be new things that you're calling mistakes because your perspective has matured. You see what we're saying? That's the growth process.
You will be beyond making the same mistakes. In other words, you might be able to go on supply run and do it right. Because you can accomplish that. And there'll be a lot of things that you can do. In fact, you do everyday things that you used to make mistakes on whenever you would do it. And now you can do it without making mistakes. But the only things that you're aware of are the things that you don't do right. Do we have to waste our time telling you everything that you do right? Which doesn't teach you anything. It only feeds your ego. But what you want to know is the things that you don't do right, so that you can correct it. We don't tell you that you're doing them wrong because we like to make you feel bad, or we like to nag you, or we like to point out all your mistakes. It isn't that at all. It's so that you will know that you did not accomplish that correctly, so next time you can do it again and do it twice. So, if you, because let's use the cake mix as an example. If next week you go on supply run, you make the same mistake with the cake mixes that you did this past week, does that mean that you did your homework? No, it doesn't mean that you did your homework. It means that you just took it and exerted no effort in the direction to correct it. But let's say that you go on supply run and you do find the right technique. But then you might do something else. Does that mean that you didn't learn this lesson this last week? No. It meant that you learned that lesson, but you had another lesson presented to you that you realized you didn't know. And you had the opportunity to see where you need to exert effort to learn. It's a continual climb upward. When you want to learn something, it's always a continual road upward. But it's when you repeat the same lessons over and over again that makes you begin to feel like you're not making any progress. Can you understand me? That's one good thing about the next level. You can continue to grow as fast as you want to grow. But you can't grow faster than you're capable of growing. Now, that doesn't make sense, does it? It does in my mind, it might not in yours. Because you can want to grow very fast, but it's like trying to move more quickly than your vehicle can go. If you try to move more quickly than your vehicle can go, then you begin to fumble, you begin to stumble, and you begin to drop things and break things. So you have to slow your vehicle down according to the pace that it is capable of going, but moving a little bit faster than a snail's pace, and gradually improve the pace that you are doing, making your vehicle go at, and before you know it, you will be able to go at a faster pace than what you were capable of doing prior to your beginning to do this particular thing.
Now, when T's talking about,
I don't know if I'm making a bit of sense.
when T's talking about within the range or scope of the capacity of your vehicle, change and adopting ways to the next level and perfecting ways to the next level, I'm afraid that there are still members of the class, and at times probably all of the individuals in the class, who are doing less than what your vehicle can take in the matter of control. Do you understand that? And so anytime you're doing less than the capacity of your vehicle in its change, or the capacity of your mind in controlling your vehicle, or in the limit of your ability to perform strict adherence to the ways of the next level. Anytime you're not coming up to that capacity of your mind, then that's wasted time. And the one thing we hate, and that all the next level hates, is wasted time.
Don't have time to waste time.
It's just, a waste is the most horrible thing there is.
And you don't want to waste this time. This time has been given to you. All the time that you've been here, you shouldn't regret it one moment. Or the days that are ahead for you, you shouldn't regret it. But you should treasure this time. It is hell. But yet you can learn so much through going through hell.
This must be where the Catholics got purgatory, or that idea. You really know what it is, don't you? You've been there.
Well, it isn't the hell that humans have to go to. They wouldn't be able to understand this, but one day you'll be able to look back at this and really wish that you had done better. And I'm telling you, because I know, Joe knows what I'm talking about. We've gone through this. We know that if we had done better at the time that we were going through what you all are going through now, we would be better off than maybe not be sitting here right now.
That's why we're here. Our feet didn't grow long enough. We couldn't run fast.
I'm only joking. This is really heaven. My fingers are crossed. Well, it really is. Well, I mean, I'm being honest with you. It's not the company. It's where we have to be at this time. But don't regret. Don't be in a position in the future to feel any regret. Learn from your teachers, the wise old teachers right now, that to make every moment count that you are in this classroom. Seems like everything I say doesn't make a bit of sense. I'll have to listen to that.
I think that's just what we're having to deal with.
What?
I think that's just what we're having to deal with.
My brain is really fascinating.
Hey, buddy.
Well, I've been kind of studying youth for so long, and felt this kind of mind dropping by the wayside. I don't know why I couldn't pull myself out of it, and that's what kind of kills me the most.
What you have to do.
Days the way get over this, and then you have to do it.
No, what you have to do, though, is when you begin to feel it, then you get out. Run it out. Look at it as though it's somebody that has invaded your body, and you run it out until those thoughts go completely out of your mind.
That method still works.
It still works.
You don't have to have some concept of this carnage latching onto you, but the same process of running them off still works. It's a good way to get control of the computer.
It had to
Anytime
get
there's discouragement or negativity or things that are just hanging as weights on you. Just
It had to get bad in order for you to realize what it was like, so that you won't let it happen again. You all have the strength to get back on the track. It's just that you're innocent, but you've got to lose your innocence. You're getting old enough now to be able to get rid of the boogers. Boogers meaning the thoughts that hang you. You all don't know what a wife Gatsby was between us. We could hardly talk to you on the callers, or some of you we had trouble talking to in the class. But yet we couldn't say anything until now, because you had to show the next level how you wanted to handle those circumstances. And then they probably felt like you needed some help. We don't know. All we know is that we were told to come up here and talk to you. And so I don't know what it just made a bit of sense. But I feel like you've all realized where you all have sunk. Right? And now you're back up to where you were supposed to be. So don't lose it. Treasure it. And realize that it's a lot happier up here than it is down there. Right?
Kennedy?
Yes, I was even kind of aware of that feeling of the gaslighting between myself and my teachers, and it's happened before in the past, so I knew, it's something I could draw back on when you come and say, you pulled away from me some, and you aren't moving as fast as you could be. So I guess I can just use that as more impetus if I find that happening again in the future.
We want to be sure that you're not. We want to be sure that you're not taking this time that we're talking to you as we're not here to scold you or to tell you that you've been bad. But we're here to help you restart your own corrective motors. It's like to kind of remind you that you should have your own stimulus to move forward and to stay motivated and to stay on the track. And because there's no better place that we could be in the classroom than as teachers reminding students that you've got to be your own motivation. Because this is, do you understand that?
Because I think so, because it shows a good place on the piano roll,
yes.
Higher, a more forward place on the piano.
Believe it or not, you all aren't in that place. You only feel that. It's just like...
you get hung up every once in a while. You get in snags. You get, it's like you get caught on a hook and you can't get off of it. And it pulls you down. Or a lot of times it doesn't even pull you down as much as you think it pulls you down. I don't know if you know what I'm saying, but it's just, a lot of times it's a psychological thing that's happening within you that causes you problems. Because you're letting things sneak in to see yourself in such a bad light, or to see your cohorts in such a poor light, or that you're just not running those negative things away and pushing forward and enjoying the process. The class, the work, the homework of the class is not all dismal, and even though some of the homework is very painful, it still all balances out to have its reward in each step that you take forward. It's not just pure pain without reward for progress.
We go through periods like you. We have to fight to keep ourselves on the right track. And sometimes we reach despair about the same as you. And our guidance, our teachers withdraw from us.
That's right.
And we have to push toward them. We have one thing in our favor that you all don't know. I mean, a little bit of experience. We know that when they pull away, that we try to reach it. And we know that through our suffering we grow. We are perfectly aware of that. Where you may not know that every time you suffer, you are having the opportunity to grow. And what you want to do is hurry up and push through that suffering so that you can see where you have grown to.
And we're not so naive as to think any longer that it's understanding which brings us the needed ingredient of forward motion. Sometimes you're still so naive and so innocent that you desperately pull for the understanding of what it is you're dealing with, and you feel like you have to understand it before you can move forward, and that's usually waste. That's just satisfying an old notion that you have to have understanding. You don't really have to have understanding, even though the brain is programmed to feel like it has to have comprehension and understanding. But a lot of times it's not going to have anything. Nothing's going to be satisfied. No, you're not going to get any understanding. You're not going to get anything to satisfy you. And the test at that time is, what are you going to do when I don't give you any understanding or anything to satisfy you? Are you just going to stay at zero and at nil until you get the understanding you're demanding? Or are you going to move forward in spite of it and to say to heck with desiring understanding at this time? Do you follow what we're saying? You're going to get into a completely different group of growth patterns than you have related to since you took these vehicles. And it doesn't have to be such a painful process to fluff off those growth patterns and let that change take place.
Those growth patterns you're talking about still using these vehicles you're talking about?
Yes, while you're still in these vehicles, you're going to have to get used to the fact that certain processes that you thought were important and necessary in patterns of growth, they aren't going to happen the way they used to happen. And you're just going to hold yourself back if you expect them to happen that way. And you're not going to always be able to see what's happening, because at certain levels of your testing and your growth, you're not to see what's happening, because the test at that time will just be, are you going to move forward even though you can't see what it is that's hanging you up, or because your curiosity isn't satisfied in a certain way? Because those are all just games of the human computer to have all those curiosities satisfied.
What you're talking about right now, I was thinking that it's not going to happen in a flash, or there's not going to be this instant understanding one day. It's just continually doing it over and over and continuing in the process to it won't be all sudden there. It'll just be there because it's been happening all the time.
Because you're there. The change just unfolds, and you're there. But if you cling to old things that you feel like you have to take with you along in the process of that change, you're just dragging dead weight.
I wish it was that simple, where you all could awaken someday and but if that was the case, you wouldn't have to be here. There wouldn't be any purpose to your being here. We could just sit it out, right? or we could just stay in the next level. Why come here? If they can work magic like that. Fortunately, the next level is very real. The life that humans live isn't real, because they don't know that they're just a lab experiment. They think they're really important. They think that they're the superhuman race, and they're really just plants. So that's not a real life. They're in the process of becoming something. All they're doing, they're being used to build good genes in order to build members of the next level. But that's way down the line. And their lives that they're living isn't real at all.
Isn't anything what they think it is. It really...
It's just an illusion, but then that's the illusion that builds the kind of genes that the next level needs for future members of the next level. It just goes on and on, you know. So the only thing that really matters in this garden right now is what you're doing. No, I'll take that back. It does matter. Everything that's happening out there matters. But it's in the process of becoming, just like you're in the process of becoming, but what you're becoming is more real than what the humans are becoming. They're a long way off from being real.
What they're becoming isn't anything of what they think they're becoming. What they're becoming is just a development of plant improvement process for purposes of the next level.
And they're being directed by the next level. You can see it. At least we can. I don't know if you all can. Just the different things that happen. You can just tell that someone's directing it.
Even as the next level introduces, like it's designed to introduce diseases that require control over certain things. You know, it's just they don't let them. They just don't let them. They can go so far in messing up the plants that the next level is trying to progress, and then they step in and cause them to not go astray any further in that direction and make them get back on the track in their genetic development. Of course, what they think is happening is something entirely different from what's happening. But it doesn't really matter, because what they think is happening, in a sense, helps motivate what's supposed to be happening.
Which is more illusion.
So
it's really... Anyway, what we started out to say a moment ago, don't waste your time that you're here. Try to keep your mind in control. And look at everything that you do as a task. Whether you are just checking the oil or doing the vital signs on the cars, or typing up a report, or you're at your out-of-class test, whatever it is, keep in mind always that you want to handle it the way a member of the next level should be handling it. And don't forget it. You have the opportunity to know what it feels like to have your mind in your vehicle. Don't forget it. And try to keep it there from now on. Because you know how badly you felt when it wasn't to the surface. It's painful. It makes you sick. And you don't want to go through that again. Know what I mean? Know what I mean? Okay.
I have a mind doing my out-of-class test. I want to stay on track. And like I feel like I don't know exactly what I need to know all the time, and I have a desire to know what I need to know in order to accomplish the task that I'm in. But I understand the instructions of, we need to be in the place that we need to be in. And how can I accomplish that? Am I relying more on my what my vehicle thinks that it needs in order to accomplish it, or is there some way I can accomplish that? Well, of course there is. Accomplish it by following the instructions I'm given, but is there some way that, or what are the guidelines exactly I need to follow in order to accomplish?
Are you saying because you feel inadequate for the task that you're doing?
Well, yes, in a lot of ways I feel like I don't know what I think I would like to know. In order
Well,
to accomplish
there was no clean-cut description of your out-of-craft task saying you must know this in order for us to hire you, right?
That's correct.
And therefore, they didn't know what you knew. So it's just a matter of, are they satisfied with what you don't know and what you do know? And as you, can they take care of the things that you don't know in other ways when you don't know how to do them? You see what we're saying? And you'll probably learn more just by the experience of the things that come your way over a little bit of time, and whatever little bit of study you might be able to do in the process, but you don't want to do a great deal of it because still your out-of-craft task is still a secondary task. And so as long as your employer isn't putting you down because you're not doing what you're hired to do, then just ride with the tide.
Okay.
If he's putting you down and making you feel like you're a dummy and you're totally out of place at the
I
task.
bet you know more than he does.
Okay. Maybe I need to have more of a guideline, a definable guideline in my head, or maybe there isn't. I need to say that too. There's a couple of circumstances where I can do things in town, as far as I go to another store and learn something from this store, and
I do only if your task demands it. Like only if you have something you have to do at your task that requires that you know that. But don't anticipate I'm going to need to know this. Therefore, I won't go over there, that place, and learn what I could learn over there so that I could apply it in the event that I have to here. No, as it comes and you need it, then do it because
try to
it's there.
create it myself.
That's right, and don't try to anticipate it.
Okay.
In other words, your task should be to try to see how much you can stay where you at that particular task, because you're getting what you're supposed to get. Let's say a ray is, this is an example, just something like they're directing something to you in that craft, in that task. And if you go somewhere else, it isn't that easy to take that ray off of that task and move it over to that other one. Okay? That's not as real. And so therefore you want to try to stay at your task as much as possible. Now, if they push you out the door and force you to go somewhere else, then that's different. That means you have to go. But to look for ways and think that in other words, your vehicle is conning you to make you think that you can learn more or learn something from another place, when it isn't exactly correct.
Okay.
In other words, your vehicle is conning you. This is how you want to look at it.
Okay.
And now, if your boss says to you, Arthody, I want you to go over to such and such a place and see what you can learn about this particular computer, and then so you can come back and work on these computers. Now, you can't say to him, oh no, I can't go. I've got to do this. If he presents it to you and he wants you to go over there, then you have to go.
And then you keep us posted as to how much that's happening, and we will help you decide whether or not it's destroying the kind of task that you're supposed to have.
If you all were in the next level, trying to keep track of all of you down here, you would you would know why we're trying not to have you all going in so many directions at one time. Because it isn't easy to keep track of all. Let's face it, the next level has their limitations. And they can't put as many men on this job to watch over you all as it would require if you all went in all kinds of different directions. And you might, you need to be considerate of them and try not to make their work more difficult. Our task is difficult as it is, but your task is difficult, but there's no sense making it difficult for them because they're in the next level and we're down here, Like, if we're going to be miserable, we're going to make you miserable too, So you want to keep all those things in mind when you go someplace, when you're not assigned to go there, and try to figure out ways to stay put, rather than figure out ways to go someplace. When you have to do it, they can adjust, but it's when you don't have to do it. Okay?
Want to set it up? How do we set this one up?
All right.